Hello everybody, Jay here from the MARZ Project. I hope you can hear me. Yes, you can. Um, Today we're going to be doing another Access class live, and our host, I guess, is our own Corey Goldman from the MARZ Project. There
It's
he is.
me!
So of course you're all familiar with seeing Corey on, but he will be giving us a demo. I guess we're doing a mic and recorder intro. Is that what you say? Like mic and recording kind of
Something like that, yeah. We had a lot of fun these last couple times, like talking to Brianna about like production stuff, and the more I talk to like video people about video stuff, the more I realize that it's important to like have a good sound foundation, and that's like something that's really overlooked, you know. So like sound is like my whole thing, but like sound for video is a whole other thing too. And just, you know, like it can be kind of just like a weird subject, like recording sound, and like, yeah, just the discussions made me realize that like we just need to do a good strong overview. So this access class is, so you want to record some audio, how does that work? This is going to be a pretty free-form discussion mostly here between me and Jay, and I think the hope is that I'm going to distill like whatever we do here down into some more digestible access class videos at some point. So I'm gonna use this stream to kind of like figure out what I want to say to everyone. So if I don't know, I don't know how many viewers we have right now, but if anyone does have questions about anything in particular, I'm just gonna start rambling about sound topics and hope that Jay has enough questions to chime in. But feel free to interject.
Yep. And we can always like take comments later too. So don't be afraid to comment on the video after we've posted them, or after the stream. Even they stay up and stay live for a long time. So we're always down to answer questions.
Absolutely.
Afterwards.
Totally. And Instagram, you can always hit us up too at the MARZ Project. So trying to figure out where to start. I basically grabbed a whole table full of stuff, and this is like where I started today. It was just kind of pulling out a bunch of different audio gear and thinking about like what sort of things I wanted to show people and talk about. Recording sound is an interesting subject because like the way you go about it can vary quite a bit depending on the application that you're recording for. So like someone who's doing sound for like film or video, like say you're making commercials or shooting like narrative film or something like that, or TV or whatever, the sounds like recording equipment that you'd use on location for that is really different for this than the sort of recording equipment that you might use if you were recording like a podcast in a room versus the kind of equipment you would use if you were recording like someone singing a song or playing an instrument. And the kinds of like the microphone you might choose for one instrument isn't necessarily the thing you choose for another. So we're gonna just give a big overview of like the different kinds of mics that exist, the sort of like different ways that you can capture audio, and a little bit about like how to think about sound in an electronic / digital setting. We're all really used to experiencing sound in our daily lives, right? We, you know, those of us who can hear often, you know, and we even if you are hearing challenged, you can often like feel sound, because sound is one of the few sensory things that actually moves your body physically. Like unlike light, sound shakes your ears and moves your whole body if it's loud enough. And so like it's like this interesting physical medium. When we translate it into like the digital world, that's where things can become a little more confusing. You know, we're pretty used to like sounds echoing around in rooms and thinking about that, but we're also used to the bias of our ears and how our ears hear stuff, and the bias of how our brains interpret what our ears hear. We're really good at filtering out information that we don't care about and like focusing in on things that we do care about. You know, like when you're like, if you're in like a crowded room and like you're talking to someone, if you you know, you might need to focus a little more than usual, but like you can tune out the other talking and sort of have this sort of like, in to make a visual analogy, like focusing the camera on a subject and ignoring the background, you know. So our brains filter that stuff out. Microphones are not like ears though, and like so using them effectively becomes like this whole other tool, because they don't have this all like intelligent brain behind them. So when we're capturing sounds in the real world, of course, like the very first thing that like happens is a sound gets generated, right? And then it needs to be captured somehow, and that sound needs to be turned into electrical energy, and that's the purpose of a microphone. Interesting fact, microphones and speakers are the opposite technology. Microphones convert sound pressure waves into electricity. Speakers convert electricity into sound pressure waves. And the sort of technology is like the same, just kind of opposite.
Yeah, can't you use your like headphones as microphones in
Yes.
some way? Like if you plug in, although they're very quiet, like you can actually get a usable sound out of a pair of headphones, which is really bizarre.
You can also use speakers as microphones. Too. So like a common so that's a common trick for like a weird effect for vocals is people like to use even like these headphones, these like HD 280s, and it's like we'll stick them on their face, record that, and you get this kind of muffled telephone effect.
Interesting.
Yeah. Another thing is like we're getting into the weeds real quick here, but like another thing is like setting up a big speaker wired backwards basically to like act as a microphone to pick up low frequencies. It's called people sell these. It's called the sub kick for like capturing sub frequencies from your kick drum.
Oh, interesting. Very cool.
Yeah, so there's so many different kinds of microphones. We're already like getting into like, oh, there's this thing and that thing. Like there's so many different kinds, and like their uses and applications just depend on what you're trying to capture.
Right.
There's basically two main kinds of microphones, although like there's some subcategories. They're dynamic and condenser mics. The difference is basically like the technical physical way that it converts sound pressure waves to electricity. The dynamic mics, like the classic SM58, works exactly the way that a speaker works, but in reverse. Condenser mics, like my C414, have like this like capsule. You can see even on camera that capsule hovering in the middle, and so that's like the condenser technology. That capsule is like charged with electricity, and then when it moves, it converts into electricity. So the practical difference between a condenser and a dynamic mic is that condensers require power to operate, and dynamic mics do not. There's other things, like you'll hear people say like, oh, like condensers are like more sensitive than dynamic mics, or like and that's like maybe true, but like usually it's just like they're just more sensitive at a given gain level, and if you turn this up as loud as that mic, it might be just as sensitive. They have a different sonic character though, and every mic sounds a little different. So when you get to like the higher level of like knowing what you're doing and having some choices, you might choose one mic or the other based on how it sounds. But more practical than that is like how it works in the space that you're using it in. So that's where the different like kinds of mics come in and the kinds of pickup patterns. Okay, we're gonna go there right away.
Let's do it.
I made an outline for this, but we're just gonna see where we go. So most microphones that we use have, so every microphone has what's called a pickup pattern or a polar pattern. Like our ears, they're somewhat directional, or they're not. In that like how do I explain polar patterns? Can you pull up the top-down mic here? Or the top-down camera?
Yeah,
top-down mic.
Top-down mic?
Yeah. I want to zoom in on, my C414, which has...
Nice zoom. There you go.
Thank you. A little wobbly stand here. That is the camera, not the table wobbling.
It's going to test its image stabilization.
Yeah, it's really working hard there. So, okay, you can see here, these like selections here are the different polar patterns for this microphone. This is what's called a large diaphragm condenser.
Their logo is a polar pattern too, isn't it?
It is.
It's three cardioid
patterns. Yes.
Kind of a cool idea for a logo.
Good eye, Jay. Yeah. So Jay noticed the cardioid pattern. It's named that because it's supposed to look like a heart.
And like cardio, yeah.
However, it is always depicted this way.
An upside down heart.
Which I think looks more like a butt. So.
Not exactly cardio though.
Yeah, but yeah, it doesn't. There's no good term for that. But anyways, so these patterns refer to like when you are addressing this mic, which mics can be, can you cut back to me real quick?
Sure.
Mics can be one of two ways. They can be like and address, like we say carrot, right? So carrot, or they can be side address, like ice cream cone.
Really? Is that are those technical terms?
Yeah, side address or end address. Yeah.
Oh, a carrot and
those, you know, but like so that's how you explain to someone to hold a mic.
Yeah.
So okay, so the SM58 is the most common live mic. Like these things are they've been around forever. They're notoriously durable and they're just predictable. They're not necessarily the greatest sounding microphone in the world, but they are everywhere.
Yeah, you pick one up and you can feel they're pretty hefty. Like you're not gonna you probably could drop it on the floor.
It's heavy. This is way heavier than this mic for sure. Like noticeably heavier.
Some pretty significant weight to them.
Notorious, like the like joke is that you can hammer nails with them, but like I don't know, they get dropped. Like they're super durable. Oh yeah, why did I start talking about this though? You got me derailed on like durability and weight. Pickup pattern.
Yeah,
right.
Carrot and ice cream.
Carrot, thank you. So this mic is an and address thing. So like carrot, right? It's designed to like pick up sound from there. And so like if you're trying to talk to someone about how to use this mic and they're holding it like this, like no, like it's like a lot of people prime to do because they see people use mics that are designed to be used this way, like this. But this one's not. So you gotta be like, oh, carrot, not ice cream cone. And that's just people get what you're talking about.
Right.
So
like would that not be like the newscaster microphone? Would there be a different one for that?
Like so, like something where if they wanted to hold it like this,
right?
Yeah, this is not a great choice for this.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah. So Jay's touching on something interesting, yeah, which is like how you want to use the mic.
Right.
Is a huge effect on your choice.
So what would be then a good alternative if you were doing that sort of like run and gun newscasting sort of style?
Where you want it out of their face.
Right, where you can see the person's face. Yeah, like
so
like that. Yeah.
Like I don't have like a specific model that I'd recommend for that. Like I'm not a live like what do they call it, like ENG, like electronic news gathering or whatever.
Oh,
like,
okay, yeah.
Guy. So like but I would think that like I mean honestly like that might be a great choice for a lav. Like but
true.
But
like
if you're doing a handheld thing,
just
something that's like maybe a handheld condenser that was like or something like that, you know.
Every so often you see people walking around with boom mics in their hands, which is pretty crazy, but like.
Okay, yeah. So like gosh, I'm like spinning off in a whole bunch of different subjects here. So let's wrap back around to polar patterns, then we'll talk about handling noise and all kinds of fun stuff like that. I'm gonna add that to my list here. This mic has a cardioid pattern, like most mics do. You can assume that a microphone, unless it's advertised as having a different pattern, has a cardioid pattern. The idea of cardioid, can you cut back to the overhead?
Yeah.
So the point of cardioid is like, these patterns are showing you like what the mic is going to hear based on like the direction it's pointing, right? So when this mic's pointed this way, like a cardioid pattern is going to pick up most from like the front of the mic and reject from the rear. So this is an image of like how sensitive it is. So this pattern here on the far left is called Omni, or omnidirectional. When this mic is set into Omni, it picks up equally sounds from all directions. And then as you adjust the patterns, it starts to, you can see this one like sort of like a wide cardioid to like this cardioid pattern. It starts to kind of like create this little dimple, and where it starts to reject sound from the back. So that's like a cardioid pattern. As we get past cardioid, we get to this pattern called hypercardioid, where it starts to reject from the sides and actually start to pick up from the back again. Or like kind of reject from the rear sides and pick up from the back. And then we get all the way over to figure 8, which picks up equally from the front and the back and rejects from the sides. This all sounds like weird and esoteric and like why do you care? Well, like remember I was saying like mics aren't like your ears, and so like you gotta tell that microphone what you want it to hear, basically. And so like some situations like are really useful for having like you want sound pick up in all directions. Like say I'm recording, say I have this one microphone and I need to record a band with it, like and they're like a choir, say like a cappella choir. There's 8 of them. I could have them all stand in a circle around this mic, put in an Omni, and it would pick them all up equally loud. And that's a pretty great solution for that sort of problem. say there were only 4 of them, I might put it in cardioid pattern, and so like the person who's more on axis would be a little louder than someone who's off axis. So we talk about this idea of on and off axis, right? So there's both this. So this is a side address mic, right? So instead of the end address, this is the front. So you'd sing into this part, and so like if I'm in cardioid pattern, I'm going to be loudest when I'm here on the mic, and as the mic rotates away, I'm going to get quieter and quieter until back here it'll be as quiet as I can get. It won't be silent because this my voice bounces off the wall back there and back into the microphone. So it's like there's no like silence, but it'll reject more sound and be a little quieter. So you can use these what are called pickup patterns or polar patterns to your advantage. Like if you're placing microphones, just being mindful of where the axis, like where the on axis spot is, and then also where the rejection points are. So like when I'm using like one of these NT5s, this is a small diaphragm condenser mic. This thing's only got a cardioid pattern, so I'm always being mindful of like not only where I'm pointing it, but where the back of it's pointed to, because that's where if I can, if there's something I don't want this mic to hear, I point the back of it at it, if that makes sense. So it becomes a game of like trying to point it at your source, but also like aim the back of it so it like rejects something that you're trying to reject. So remember, like Jay, when we were doing those interviews with like those overhead, we use these 2 mics as overheads to record like 2 people in a set of interviews. It's a popular choice for these mics, but they pick up a ton of room tone.
Right.
Mostly because that room was really loud. But like in an ideal situation, I would have like had it so like the backs were pointed, like they would like reject each other, But there was no way to position them that way where they would not be like on camera, so it like didn't really work out.
I've used different kinds, obviously like with a shotgun mic, we haven't got there yet, but it's kind of the same where you're you want to have you got that rejection in the back of it.
Yeah.
But like I've always found that facing them down toward the ground was always a better, cleaner signal for like what I've found that I've been doing. So like if you could get your mic underneath, like a lot of times you see the boom person like holding it up above the talent. But I feel like going from like right now we've got our boom mic, technically it's set up where it's facing toward the ground a little bit, sort of.
Well, it's facing the wall. It's facing me, but it's a low angle.
Right, but it's like its rear is facing like toward a wall. So definitely, it definitely picks up from the back as well.
So Jay's talking about we have a different shotgun mic. This is a camera mounted shotgun mic. That's what this whole assembly is here. But the idea is that this is a hypercardioid pattern probably. It's made the pickup pattern is made narrower by this tube. So I'm told the longer the tube, the narrower the pattern. But the narrower the pattern, the more off axis stuff it starts to pick up out the back. So it becomes this kind of weird game. Mostly like we're mostly concerned with off-axis stuff, like when you're inside or there's like multiple things happening, So like if you're like in a nice, wonderful sounding space and it's just you, like it doesn't really matter so much. But if you all of a sudden you got a bunch of different things and it's important that they're isolated in your recording, then like choosing the right pickup pattern and the right mic for the job can be more important. I guess, I mean, obviously the right mic for the job is important, but you can record sound with any mic. We're talking about like these like fancy different types, but like everyone's got like a phone, and you can record sounds with your phone too. Like there's like an app for that, and that's cool. Your phones have some kind of weird little condenser mic in them, probably like what's called like an electric condenser probably. It depends on how cheap your phone is or fancy, and they may or may not have some sort of like digital signal processing going on to like improve the sound too, but they don't like my iPhone doesn't give me control over that. It just kind of does what it's gonna do.
Right.
So it's always nicer to have like a more dedicated solution. Okay, so like the other kinds of mics that are like more for like specific applications would be like the shotgun mic, or like the lavalier mic. So y'all have seen these things before. This is like a sort of thing that you like clip to someone's shirt, or like inside a shirt, and this is an omnidirectional condenser mic, as most lavs are. They're very tiny though. Like the actual here, can you cut to the overhead? Show the actual capsule of this thing. So you can see inside my C414. See that big gold disc there? That's the capsule. So it's huge. Like it's called a large diaphragm. You can sort of see the grill of this microphone here, and the capsule is somewhere in there. So very, very tiny. But it's like size is not everything when it comes to microphones. There's maybe something about like the amount of air that moves it affects something. Like I'm told that smaller diaphragms are easier to move, so they tend to be more sensitive to higher frequencies.
Interesting.
But that's like an all other things being equal kind of a thing, you know. But anyway, so like the Lav allows you to like put a mic somewhere small where they don't often go, and they, you know, like this one's got some long attached cable with a hardwired thing on the end. Yeah, and so like condenser mics, this requires some kind of like, well, this should require plug-in power, but for some reason it works with my Lightning dongle, which doesn't supply plug-in power, so I'm not really sure what the deal is with this thing.
Maybe it's a lower signal strength or something.
Yeah, something like that.
'Cause I know some of them, if they don't get the power, they're just like at a
They're just lower output.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So like typically with like the power for the like these kinds of condensers, it's like it's phantom power is what it's called.
Mm-hmm.
There's two kinds of microphone power: phantom power and what's called plug-in power. So that's like the phantom power is like a much high. It's like 48 volts. A lot of volts. So it's enough to like power lights and like other things on like on this thing, like the, if you want to like, yeah, so like the indicator for the polar patterns lights up, and there's actually some like other lights and selections on the back. Oh, we should talk about these features too, because these are important things. We'll hit those in a second. But anyway, so like the plug-in power just provides like, I think it's like 2.5 volts or something like that. There's like a lot less power just to like that's like a common camera technology, and that's like to drive microphones but still not drain your batteries like crazy, I assume.
Right.
My understanding is that if you're trying to use any portable recorders that output phantom power like these zooms, that it kills your batteries.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Super fast.
That thing will eat AA batteries for sure.
Yeah.
But like the little mic that I've got on this camera, right, that I'm using here is what Corey's talking about, is the plug-in power.
Yeah. So like
that one has batteries, so that one takes a 9-volt battery.
Yeah, okay.
But it plugs, it sits on top of the camera as well. But yeah, these are pretty popular. These little Rode video. This is a Video Micro,
yeah,
I believe.
Yeah.
They're a pretty popular choice, and they're a little teeny like shotgun. I would show you, but I would have to ruin my audio.
They're essentially like it's like a shotgun mic, kind of like this one, but it's like short like this.
Yeah, it looks exactly.
Little, sort of dinky little thing. So like this guy's got some of these like ventings in the side, like, and like this guy's got a lot of venting in the side of the thing, and that's just to change the pattern. So it's like a physical thing. You can actually you can unscrew these caps, and there's interchangeable capsules. There's Omni capsules for these too. Although, like, I don't really know why I'd want a stereo pair of Omnis.
Interesting.
For my purposes.
Yeah.
But so someone's got use for them. Anyways, okay, so those are like the kind of like main kinds of like mics. Some features you might find on mics that like I have here on the C414. There's something called a pad, and there's something called like a low cut or high pass filter. So like you might be recording something that's really loud, and like need to turn it down at the microphone, so you can do that. That's what a pad is. And then a high pass or low cut filter basically cuts out low end. So say you're recording someone talking, well, we don't need like the sub bass frequencies of that to come through, so like we can just filter that out, and then you'll get a cleaner recording. Anytime you can do that kind of filtering in the analog domain, like before you've actually recorded something, you'll get a cleaner recording. Yeah. well, I'll try and explain why that is, but we'll see if how we wrap around to that. So, a bunch of different kinds of microphones, right? The various specs. Like some are better than others for some purposes, but like they all do kind of the same thing. So, what do you plug these things into? Like, we need like they don't make any sound on their own. They need a preamp to be brought up to a volume that we can hear somewhere, and so like where do we find preamps? So most people who do recording don't think about this. Like it's kind of like when you first start recording, you don't really think about like my preamps, right? So you need a preamp to turn it up, and then you need something to convert it from an analog to a digital signal. And usually those are self-contained within the same unit. So this is about like so you want to record and you've got a microphone. Where do you want that recording to end up, right? Do you want it to go to your phone, or do you want it to like you want it on your computer? Do you want it on your tablet? Do you just want a digital recorder that records straight to itself? You know, like thinking about like where you're trying to send that audio to is pretty crucial, because the way you connect things is really different depending on the device. So I have a few of like the most common sorts of things that you might want to connect a microphone to on this desk. Got a laptop, got a USB audio interface, have some portable recorders. My phone's charging down here. I might pull that out. Let's start. So most microphones that are like pro mics use a connection that is called XLR. 3-pin connection. Will you pop overhead? So like this is what's called the female XLR jack.
What's that top part?
That's just like some
some piece to it, because I know some of them, like the boom mic that we're using, actually has an internal battery, and it charges the port for the charger is in the XLR.
That's clever.
Like, inside there. Yeah.
I bet this is just like something to help you like remove the whole assembly if you had to like take it apart or something. It's like so anyways, these 3 pins transmit an audio signal, and that audio signal goes down the old XLR cable and out to something that has an XLR input. And so like that would be like maybe my Zoom portable recorder with these XLR inputs here, or the Focusrite audio interface with its XLR inputs here. You notice that both of these ones have like these like holes in the middle of them. See those? Those are what are called combo jacks. These accept both XLR connections and 1/4 inch, or whatever you call these, 1/4 inch male connections for like instrument cables and stuff like that. So yeah.
Why is it that instruments use those instead of XLR cables?
That's a really good question. History?
Just...
what you're really asking is, why are instrument cables unbalanced and not balanced connections, right?
Right. So the
and actually, I don't really know. I think the answer is just like history. They just started out being built that way, and they continue to be built that way.
Okay. But they can easily be like converted, right? Like there's converters from the 1/4 inch to XLR.
Yes.
Right.
Jay is touching on a really important thing. Before I like start talking too much about these cables, like these connectors are just connectors.
Right.
Like the XLR connection on the end could easily terminate in a TRS connection somewhere else. And so like the thing that matters, I'm getting into the weeds, I'm getting ahead of myself, but the thing that matters is how many pins, like how many actual like wires are contained within this cable. There's 3 in an XLR cable. There are 3 in a TRS cable. There are 2 in a TS cable. We got to talk about this now, because I went there. So okay, yeah. So XLR is the most common connection method, but there are other methods, including like another common one is like 1/8 inch mini jack, which is like the kind of like a headphone jack connection, right? And so like if you're, can you cut overhead real quick?
Yeah.
So if you're familiar with like the way a headphone jack looks, you can see there are these 2 black bands on the end of this thing. Those are splitting up the jack, or like the into 3 sections, right? So we call that the tip, the ring in the middle, and the sleeve on the outside. So we call it, so it's TRS for short. So this is a TRS male connection. Over here I have a guitar cable. This is a little bit bigger. This is like the 1/4 inch size, but you see this one's only got 1 black band. There's no ring on this one. It's just tip sleeve. So we call this a TS connection. XLR cables have 3 pins that correspond to the 3. So it's literally the 3 pins and the 3 tips of this connection are the same thing. It's just a different connector. So XLR is more robust. It's a beefy connection. It's strong, and it also has this thing where if it's well designed, this cable is not designed this way, but like this microphone is. One of the pins. This is probably really hard to see, but if you, like, you might be able to see that like one of the pins is longer than the others.
Get it to focus.
Where is it?
There
Come on,
go.
focus. Yeah,
It is.
you see that one that's like kind of on the top there? It's a little bit longer than the other ones.
Huh.
And so I believe that's like the ground. I forget if that's like. So here's where my electrical engineering knowledge falls short. I think that's the ground, and that so it connects first. So when you plug it in, the thing is grounded before any of the hot connections are made. Right?
I see.
So whereas with these TRS, these little mini jacks, they're kind of like notoriously like funky, you know.
And you lose your phantom power, right? If you try to go with any other kind of connection, right?
Yes.
Like you can't put phantom power through the TS.
Correct. Yeah. So great. Yeah. So like focus right here, the combo jacks. The combo jacks. I'm walking a mirror image of myself right now. The combo jacks are they can accept either a TS,
Right.
or I believe they take balance connections too. No, these ones don't. So they can accept a TS or TRS connection, but it'll just ignore the R and just use it like a TS.
Right. But like
Or it will accept XLR, and then XLR can spit out phantom power, but it can't spit out phantom down the quarter inch line. It only comes out the XLR.
But say you had like an electric guitar, they have amps on the thing, like on the instrument, don't they? Like,
No.
or do they?
They're passive.
Like, they're passive.
Yeah.
So it's just fed.
Usually, there are active guitar electronics too.
Okay.
But so typically, and it's not like usually like, so it's passive, and that gets sent out to like the preamp for the guitar users in the amp.
Right.
Although there are some active guitars, it's more common in the bass world to have a preamp built into your bass, like a 9-volt battery. You could like, I don't really think there's any reason why you couldn't build something that would like feed it phantom power, and like like you could. I just think you just have to like, it's just not common.
Right.
It's like a weird thing where like the different worlds of audio have different standards.
Right.
Like film audio uses different connections. Like there's a bunch of connectors like in film audio that I've never seen in my life. And there's even some like esoteric kind of like digital audio connections that I've never done audio over Ethernet. Never had any reason to do that.
Yeah, or HDMI too. You can send.
Oh yeah, there's all kinds of connections.
Audio can do, or HDMI can do Ethernet. Like I don't know. It's
right. Yeah.
Such a weird. Yeah.
Like connectors are just connectors, and so like it's being mindful of the thing you're connecting it to that's really important.
Right. Different ways of sending data.
Right. So here's where this thing about like the different kinds of connections gets really confusing, right? So like microphones use all these like XLR connections, but then when you're connecting stuff like downstream from that, like you're still using the same connections, right? So I want to talk about like signal flow a little bit, and like why we have TS and TRS cables. Like, this one's got three tips, 2, and why the difference? So there's this confusing thing. So in audio, there are mono signals, and they're what are called unbalanced. And then there are mono balanced signals, and then there are stereo signals. And mono balanced signals and stereo signals use the same cabling. And so knowing which you're operating with at any moment is really important. So I guess we should talk about, we covered so many things. It's time to talk about mono versus stereo, I think.
Yeah.
Right, so we haven't really talked about this idea yet. So like all the mics that I've pointed out so far are mono microphones. They're monophonic. They just record the one sound and output a single monophonic sound. So when we go to listen to them, typically like this stream's coming out of mono. And anyone who listens to us is hearing us in mono.
Although when we do the video, the music production stuff, that's stereo.
The music is in stereo, but our voices are in mono.
All the voices are, all the vocal mics are mono.
So
Yeah.
like, but our playback systems are almost always at least stereo, if not more than 2 channels. So stereo 2 channels, but you can have like 2.1 like stereo and a subwoofer, or like 4.1 like 4 speakers, and there's all these, or 5.1 is a common like home theater setup, like a center and the front left and right and back left and right and a subwoofer, common setup. But like mono like means that it's going to be the same in all speakers. So like if you're listening to this on headphones, my voice should be, unless Jay did something weird, my voice should be equally loud in the left and right sides.
You're good.
So that's monophonic. So to create a stereo sound, we have to create a difference between what's being played on the left and right speakers, right? So whether you're listening on headphones or like on speakers out loud, like you have two speakers reproducing the sound and like combining to form one image, and that's stereo, right? So if we want to create a stereo image in a recording, we need at least two microphones. And there's a couple of solutions to this. Probably the simplest. Whoa. Oh, that's a crazy sound. The chair rubbing against the piano back here. So the simplest solution for recording stereo that most people I think are used to is like the portable recorder thing. So like the H1N or the H5, they both have these like cross pairs of microphones on the top. And these are stereo microphones. So with the advantage of these things, they allow you to record a stereo feel and create a stereo effect. That's like it's immersive. It sounds like you're there, you know. If you're interested in immersive audio, there's things that record even more channels of audio. There's now what are called like ambisonic or VR microphones that record like if you've seen those 360-degree camera videos, it's that but for audio. So like you could capture a 360-degree scene and then pan it later in VR. I've only used a VR rig once, so I don't really know.
Really cool tech.
Oh man, I'm gonna be like a dinosaur in like 20 years. You guys just watch. Yelling at the kids with their VR headsets to get off my lawn. Oh man. So stereo. Why would you want to record stereo? It's like if you had if you want to capture like a sound field, and if you're trying to like if you're like doing like nature videography or something like that, and you want to make someone feel like they're there. Or just like background ambience, you know, for like a film production. Or like in music, like really anything that you don't want centered in the stereo field. So like anything that you want to sound wide is pretty fair game. Common to record guitars and keyboards and stereo. Oh yeah. So if you want to get creative with stereo recording though, like instead of these like built-in microphones that just do this one thing, you can get a pair of microphones. So this is what are called a matched pair. So they are calibrated at the factory to sound identical. You know, two mics of the same make and model will sound pretty close anyways, but these are like specially matched. And so there's a bunch of different ways to like organize them to like set up and create different kind of stereo images. I have this like tool for it. It's called like a stereo bar. This mounts to the end of a mic stand, and I can like pop these two mics in here. They really fit tight in these clips. Oh yeah, these are called mic clips that hold my microphone to my stereo bar. Simple thing. So you can. This allows me to position these into a bunch of different patterns. You know, I can swing them wide and do stuff. So a bunch of different common stereo patterns. There's like a handful of things that people do frequently, which is like, you know, and these are all things that you'll do with like a cardioid pair. Like there's the pattern that these mics use is called XY, where the capsules of the mics are aligned vertically. And so this, you can kind of change the angle at which they sit, but as long as they're aligned vertically, sound will reach them at the same time, and it'll sound very coherent. I'm not going to bore you all talking about phase today, but just it's nice if when sounds reach the two mics at the same time, they sound more coherent. So you can also create like a wider image by doing what's called an A/B spaced stereo pair. You just have them wide. There's like some like rules of thumb about like the distance between the mics versus their distance from the source. I don't really know those rules because I don't really do a lot of A/B stereo recording.
What would the application be for that? Like instruments, like performances, maybe?
Yeah, or like say you wanted to capture like, yeah, like it was basically just creating a different stereo image. It's the same purpose as like XY, except that like the reason you choose XY and like these mics are all oriented in XY is that they sum to mono well.
I see.
So like there's a thing like if we have different left and right channels and we smoosh them together into a mono channel. Oh god, I'm gonna have to say the word phase again.
Yeah.
The different phase of the different frequencies and the different frequency content causes some like long and short of it is like some frequencies get louder and some frequencies get quieter and it's what's called comb filtering. So you get like the more in phase the sounds are hitting the stereo mics, the more mono compatible it will be. So these are set up to like easily drop down to a mono signal. But if you didn't care about it, mono compatibility, and you're doing like music, and you just wanted like a really wide sound, A/B sounds pretty cool. There's also like a specific arrangement called ORTF, which involves like this like really specific mounting of it at like it's like 120 degrees out and the specific distance apart that's meant to mimic your ears.
Oh, you get really scientific with it, huh?
Yeah, and there's like another one like that.
Interesting.
The other weird one, the weirdest one, which is actually the coolest one, is called mid-side miking. So this is a feature that usually you have to like you can buy like this thing has interchangeable capsules and you can switch out this capsule, the XY capsules, for a mid-side mic capsule. But the concept of mid-side miking is really weird. It involves a large diaphragm condenser with a figure 8 pickup pattern. Remember, so figure 8 picks up from both of the sides, but not, or from the front and the back, but not the sides. So you have that, and then you have another mic, either another large diaphragm or like a small diaphragm mounted on top of it. So this thing picks up the mid, and this guy on the left and right picks up the sides. And then you have to do a little fancy processing in post. And then the result is a...
Is that it right there?
That is it right there, yeah. The result in post is a really interesting stereo image that's totally mono-compatible because you have a straight-up mono signal in the center. So it's like, instead of having left and right, you have the center and then the sides. It's pretty quirky. It took a long time for me to wrap my head around that. So Jay's pulling up. Yeah, this is the mid-side capsule. Doesn't look like much. They're hiding the microphones inside, but inside there are 2 diaphragms, 1 figure 8, and 1 cardioid. Huh.
Yeah,
with a single gain control.
I've never seen any, but that's a cool feature of those H5s. And some of the other Zoom products, they have those interchangeable capsules, and you can even just take it off, and there's a little cover, and then you can use it as a compact, just like recorder. You don't, it doesn't necessarily have to include the, you don't have to use the capsule. It's a great recorder as well for any XLR mic. So.
Right. Yeah. So like deciding whether you want like the capsule that only works with your Zooms or like a dedicated microphone setup, depends on how flexible you might want to be like in the future. They do make mics, like all these mics that I have XLR connections because I'm like a recording guy, but like they do make USB microphones too that just like output like to like a USB-A connection. And those are cool. Like there's some rad ones. There's a popular one called the Blue Yeti. I totally forgot to grab it. We have those Samson G-Tracks here.
Oh yeah. Now.
They're pretty neat. They have like an integrated desktop stand and like a headphone amp and stuff. So, like they're pretty cool, like all-in-one solution. But they're not upgradable, and they can't be a part of a larger thing. And eventually, like USB, their drivers are gonna get obsolete, and they'll, So it's like like this mic will last forever. Like
right.
It's repairable. It's connectable with equipment from 50 years ago, and it will be connectable with equipment from 50 years from now. So like I like that kind of modularity, but it's not practical and for everything. It's not necessarily very portable either. So choosing things that are like portable and useful for if that's what you need. Obviously you don't get the compromise. I got sidetracked from talking about TS/TRS. So why would we transmit mono? So okay, remember I was talking about how you can have a TRS or TS and they transmit mono signals. Why are they both? Why would you have an extra pin, an extra cable in there, or I should say like I don't know what the right terminology, an extra wire in my cable. What's the point? So the reason is like, so we have here's the difference between balanced and unbalanced connections. Balanced connections, unbalanced connections just send the sound exactly like how you think. That's unbalanced. Balanced connections, which require not the TS connection but the TRS connection, send both a copy of your signal and a polarity flipped version of your signal.
Interesting.
So that's something that happens like within the circuitry here. So like by the time it pops out the mic, like that's what you get.
Right.
It's not in the cable that happens. It's like the cable just transmits that, right?
Okay.
So the reason for that is we're gonna I guess I gotta talk about phase. So phase. Basically like. Well, this is polarity. This is a little simpler than phase. So if you imagine the sound as being like a wave,
right?
It goes up and it goes down. So you can imagine also like a sound, like if we had one sound going up and another sound going down, and they were doing it at the same time. If you play those at the same time, you actually hear silence if they're identical. It's called a Null Test. It's pretty fun to do. So anytime you want to like prove things to yourself in audio, you can do a Null Test. Like if you send a sine wave through somewhere and then like check and see how the phase aligns. This is what you were talking about last, with the like oscilloscope.
Oh,
checking
okay.
phase alignment of signals and stuff.
Interesting.
Anyways, so if you play a signal and its polarity inverted copy together, they cancel each other out and you produce silence. So what this does is it's to eliminate noise. So as a signal travels down the cable, it picks up noise. Electrical interference, like RF stuff, like just like electromagnetism is out there in the world messing with your signal. So when it gets to the end of its transmission, it's got some noise. But when you do this balance thing, you have this two copies. You have the signal and the inverted copy of the signal. So they both accumulate noise.
So a reduced noise then, the balanced one?
Well, so it's like this tricky summing thing where basically like they both incur noise, but they're like they like flip it around so it's like they use the like they do something with the inverting of the phase to like make the noise cancel itself out, and you're only left with the clean signal.
So
like,
definitely
this is a real terrible layman's explanation of this.
But if you can, essentially, like you're better off going with a balanced XLR mono signal than a non-balanced XLR.
The lesson is balanced signals are preferable whenever possible.
Yeah. You get a cleaner feed out of them.
I can't say that I've ever been like, oh dang, like I've hooked up my studio monitors with like unbalanced cables before, and like I wasn't like, oh. Like,
so in XLRs are always like all the feeds that we're getting in from our mics and stuff
balanced
are
mono
balanced.
Signals. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So
most
that's
of the
why
time, you can chain XLRs together. But fun fact, you can daisy chain these things, and like they clip into themselves. And so if you need a longer XLR and you have two XLRs, just clip them together.
That's a great feature about them.
It's really nice. It saved me a number of times. It's not ideal, like that connection point becomes another point of failure, but like if that's what you need to do, you gotta do it.
Yeah.
But I've definitely, I've ran like headphone, I ran headphones through XLR cables. It's no different, like maybe the impedance of the cable is a little different. I really don't want to talk about impedance. I really don't want to go there. I guess we can like. I'm just going to say this about it. Electricity and signal flow is a lot like water. It goes from one place to another, and like water through a pipe, the flow, there can be a lot of water or a little. It can be flowing quickly or not very quickly, and like there can be a lot of pressure in the tube or not. And that's like, so the like amperage and voltage and impedance are analogous to these like physical properties of water in a tube thing. Anyways, so like, the analogy falls short in a lot of places too, and I'm kind of like glad that there's no one with undersea warfare experience to tell me why I'm wrong in the chat right now. But okay, yeah. So that's like this is a point of confusion though. So I really wanted to clear this up: TS versus TRS and why.
Right.
So like knowing, like you might have a piece of gear that has like a mini jack, like. Oh yeah, we forgot the other wrinkle. TRRS. So we have TS for mono unbalanced. We have TRS, which can carry mono balanced or stereo. I forgot to mention that, right? So like your headphones, that's a stereo signal on a TRS connection, right? And then there's also TRRS. There's an extra ring on there. And that's like your like headphone with an inline mic. And so, like, those are actually 2 channels of input and 1 channel of output from your device. Or, I'm sorry, 1 channel of input and 2 channels of output. So it carries a mono signal into wherever it's going and a stereo signal out. So this all gets really confusing really quick.
Yeah.
You can plug a TRS connection into a TRRS jack, or I'm sorry, I should say a TRS cable into a TRRS jack, and it'll still work like to play your headphones. But your thing doesn't have a mic. The mic doesn't work.
Right. So essentially, to use a mic on the phone, you have to use the TRRS connection type.
Yeah. So this lavalier, this is called the Rode Smart Lav, and this is meant for a smartphone connection. And so it has a TRRS connector.
Right.
So there's no like headphone output on this thing.
Right.
So like it just like bypasses
but
that.
to
It's
use
just,
the mic, like you have to use an external mic with your phone, it needs to be a TRS cable.
yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And with most modern phones, you need an adapter because most phones don't have headphone or any line inputs in them anymore.
Right.
So what you need like a, what do they call the Apple one, the Fire
The lightning.
Lightning.
Yeah, I've got that.
Lightning port,
Yeah, totally.
and then or a USB-C for an Android phone.
Yeah, a little lightning dongle.
Yeah, they're just little dongles, and they, that's how you connect. I think some of them now you can obviously do Bluetooth. I've seen some like nice like Bluetooth mics. Of course, any like headset is gonna be over Bluetooth, and that's still like you can record with that if you're doing. Although I've never seen many people do that. It'd be interesting.
So Bluetooth is really.
If you're just doing dialogue.
Bluetooth is not good for recording.
Yeah.
It's not very reliable. So like if you don't care, like if it's like a podcasty thing or something like that, where you're just like trying to like, or like you're like you're recording a phone call, know, like that's fine, but like Bluetooth's not reliable.
True.
So like it's not a very robust solution. So you won't see people doing like much serious recording that way. The other problem with Bluetooth is that Bluetooth has latency. So like depending on your application, that may matter, it may not. But like Bluetooth audio always occurs a little bit later than what you're recording. I don't know if any of y'all have tried to like make music on a tablet playing through a Bluetooth speaker and wondered why the audio is coming out like 5 seconds after you made the sound. That's latency. And so Bluetooth's just not designed for low latency. It's so like in the pro solution for wireless is like still radio, analog radio signals. Although digital is becoming more popular, but it's still like it's not Bluetooth. It's like digital radio, which is somehow different. I guess it's because it's less of like maybe I don't know the distinction. I imagine that Bluetooth is more about data transmission, whereas digital radio is probably just like digital transmission of audio signals.
I know that they're getting away from that with especially with like within the Lav mic wireless Lav mic equipment and other wireless transmitters trying to get away from the radio the whole like radio idea, because Bluetooth is getting better, progressively better. Like I think those are the Rode Go Pro like are I'm pretty sure that those are Bluetooth.
I don't think they're Bluetooth.
Let's see.
All right, race to the Google.
Yep.
Oh, you're gonna beat me. You already won.
Lav. Can't remember. That's the whoops. Let's see. B&H.
Like, what is it called? All right. Rode Wireless Go, 2.4 gigahertz. So like, I mean, like, so here's where we're finding it's like the distinction is like what's it's like is it radio it's like what spectrum is it operating on.
Right.
So like radio frequencies and like Wi-Fi like operate on different parts of the electromagnetic spectrum. So what Jay's talking about is like these roads are operating in the band that's reserved for like Wi-Fi and Bluetooth.
Oh, that's right. Okay, so they're Wi-Fi essentially. They're not
but
like
it's
radio.
Well, but it is radio. I think it's, but it's just it's not like a Wi-Fi connection, but it's using the same spectrum as Wi-Fi. So yeah, this discussion came up because like so wireless broadcasting, they recently like sold off a bunch of the spectrum and made it illegal to operate a bunch of older wireless equipment like in the last few years. So there's this like rush to future-proof stuff. So like I think the thinking of this is like 2.4 gigahertz is not going to get turned over to anyone else anytime soon because that's the Wi-Fi.
It's like it's what you like if you were to connect to your like home Wi-Fi or something. That's like they usually have like the 2.4 gigahertz or a 5 gigahertz connection. So like most home Wi-Fi's are that connection. So essentially it acts like a little router, sends out a signal like a Wi-Fi signal that even your phone can see, or like it kind of like a hotspot or something. And then those little like the wireless the transmitters see that Wi-Fi signal and connect automatically to that Wi-Fi signal, and they're just kind of have a little tiny Wi-Fi network between themselves. So it's pretty cool technology. A lot of the cameras now have like all these Panasonic cameras that we're using here have a wireless remote control mode where they send out a wireless signal and you can go on the app on your phone, and then you see the Wi-Fi that they're putting out. You connect to the Wi-Fi, and once you connect to the Wi-Fi, you open up the app and it gives you the ability to control the cameras from your phone. So that's all over their own little wireless Wi-Fi system.
Super
So
cool.
pretty cool technology. And I think it's, as stable as as wireless is, it's, I think, plus you don't have to worry about as much interference, I don't think, as far as radio signals go.
Except then you have to worry about Wi-Fi interfering with
yeah,
you.
I haven't really.
The spectrum just gets more crowded out there all the time,
Right.
This is why options exist. If you look into buying wireless equipment, you can choose which part of the spectrum it operates on. Usually, like when you get to the higher end of buying wireless packs, you can
Right.
they usually come 2 or 3 different spectrum choices depending on the region you're operating in. You might be just narrowed down to whatever's legal to do where you're at, but you actually have to do the research yourself, which is kind of a drag.
Right.
But I don't know. Okay. So what I want to keep saying about these connections. So it's really important to be mindful of when you're routing audio signals around, what kind of signal your thing is sending, and then what kind of signal your cable is capable of carrying, and then what kind of signal your input is capable of receiving. Because you won't necessarily see a physical difference between these things. This TRRS jack on here and this headphone output look exactly the same, but
Right.
one is a TRRS and one's only TRS, and you just have to know so. And there are adapters to adapt between all these things. So you can totally get a TRRS to TRS adapter if I wanted to use this smartphone lav with a regular recorder, with my Zoom.
Yeah,
I can do that.
Just little tiny sleeves that you put on the front, right? I mean, you could just get little tiny ones, the adapters.
Yeah.
I wish we had some around here. I don't think we do.
That'd be a good thing to put in the toolbox. For
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. But so also just being mindful whether your inputs are balanced or unbalanced, mono versus stereo. We've talked a little bit on the stream, scratched our heads about how to route audio in here. That's the best way for what we're doing. And that's been the biggest source of confusion for both of us, I think. It has been just how do we make this audio thing work?
Yeah.
We're trying to route signals through all these different places, and so trying to be mindful of that.
Right.
So, and that gets really confusing quick because it's audio sources can get summed in a way that video sources don't really,
Right.
you wouldn't, there's no really practical reason to combine the outputs of these two cameras. It looks weird. It's it's not really a thing. But you combine outputs of microphones all the time. It's super normal to hear the outputs of a bunch of mics all at once.
Yeah, I mean you're hearing two right this second.
Absolutely.
There's a mic on my camera and there's a boom mic over for Corey, so it's
totally.
And those both are mixed down,
Yeah, and so that's totally normal. But once it hits the box and gets mixed down, there's no visual for it anymore. So you have to hold this all in your head, or be careful looking at your meters and reading stuff and just being super mindful.
Right.
Yeah. So okay, I feel this is a good time to talk about maybe preamps, right?
Okay.
So we're routing signals around and moving them from place to place. Remember I said mics need a preamp, right? At some point they need to get turned up. And so there's not a lot to know about this. Really, it's kind of simple. Basically, a good recording level is not so loud that it clips, and that's it. There's a maximum with digital audio. There's a maximum volume that things can be, and we call that digital zero. And so when we talk about digital volumes, it's always in negative numbers because the loudest possible thing is 0.
That whole thing always confuses me. Because it's different in the audio world than it is in the video world, what kind of signals you're looking at and what kind of goals you have as far as signal levels. And
it makes sense though. So here's why. So decibels, right, which we used to think of decibels as a unit of sound, but that's not true. Decibel is not the unit. Decibels just means that it's a logarithmic scale. So usually with when we're talking about sound in the world, we're actually talking about it's an abbreviation of decibels of sound pressure level, or dBSPL. Abbreviated to dB a lot, but Decibels can be measured, it's a logarithmic scale. Like anything you want to talk about logarithmically, you can talk about with decibels. So being logarithmic, like, it just goes up forever, like, so, but with there being an absolute, like, there's no really, like, quietest possible sound, but, like, there is a loudest possible sound, I guess. Like, I mean, I guess, like, in theory, there is, like, a digital silence that is the quietest possible sound, but how far down you can measure that depends on the bit depth, which is what we're going to talk about next time. So, the 0 being a hard limit and the scale being the way it works, it makes sense to, like, pin that somewhere. And you could pin it up at 100, but then you might end up with the lowest value being, like, minus something random. So at least, like, 0 gives you something concrete. It gets real confusing, though. This is a topic that I could talk about for a long time and probably not in a coherent way, I think. Anyways, okay, so measuring. Oh, yeah, so when you turn your mics up, right, so, like, preamps add gain. And so we measure that gain in decibels, not in decibels SPL, but decibels of gain, whatever you want to call that. And so, like, these things just have, like, a knob that turn it up. And so, like, in digital audio, when you feed it a signal that exceeds the maximum digital 0, or in analog hardware, when you feed it a signal that is louder than it's willing to accept, you get what's called clipping. This is an unpleasant sound. This is a sound of distortion. Mics can distort in a few places. If you play a sound that is just way too loud for the mic can distort. Most modern microphones are, like, built to withstand pretty extreme sound pressure levels without distortion. But if if you have a buddy with, like, a jet plane and you want to, like, close mic his engines, like, you might need to engage the pad on your mic or buy a special mic.
Yeah.
But most sounds we're recording are much quieter than that, and so we have these, like, gain controls. So the reason I came to this right now is because we're talking about routing signals a few different places, like, routing it right now. These mics, how are we routing this right now? Are these going into the Focusrite?
Yeah, that is running into the Focusrite, and then out of the back of the Focusrite's output, into the ATEM Mini, and so I can control all the sound through the ATEM and monitor sound that way. That is I think those are those TS cables out the back, and then it's into a TRS port on the back of the ATEM.
I think we might be running them unbalanced, but I think they do. Those could be balanced ins and outs.
Yeah.
I should bring some patch cables in.
So.
But anyway, so my point in bringing that up is, like, so Jay's got, like, a box similar to this, but with, like, a few more features, like, over there. And so, like, he's got preamps here, but then this thing also can digitally turn the signal up or down. And then it runs with ATEM, which has, like, 2 or 3 different places where you can turn the signal up or down too.
Yep.
Right?
Lots of control. I can.
Yeah. So, like, why would we want all this? Like, we just want one volume control. Well, like, I mean, it's partially because we're cobbling our system together out of a few different pieces of gear, which is pretty normal. But also because, like, just sometimes, like, certain processes, like, make it hotter. Like, there might be some reason you want to, like, tap into the signal at some point and route it somewhere else, like, to a headphone or something like that. And then it needs to be louder some other time. So it's just, like, you get provided a lot of options of where to turn up the gain. So here's where, like, we use the term gain staging, right? Basically, like, the idea that, like, you want a nice full signal the whole time that's not too loud but not too quiet. And so, like, making sure that, like, your signal's not too loud at any point in your, not just at the end, but at any point in your signal chain will, like, make sure you have a good sound. It's something like you typically, like, your meters will turn red, or you'll hear something really awful.
Yeah.
And so you'll probably know it if this is happening.
Oh yeah. Hopefully, if you're monitoring your audio like you should, when we're not doing, if Corey was just talking, I would probably be monitoring, but I'm also, wanting to listen to him. It's kind of hard, especially when you listen to yourself with the delay. I think we've talked about that before. It makes it difficult.
Yeah. Hey,
but,
just segue into talking about monitoring.
Yeah.
So yes, okay, so, like, sounds, right? So we've got microphones, they're running into preamps. We've decided whether or not we decided whether we want to record mono or stereo, and, like, what our source is, and, like, we've picked a good microphone for the job and, like, set it up. Microphone placement is a whole other topic. We could do a whole stream about that probably. Placing it in a way that, like, Well, so how do you know if you placed it well? You gotta listen. So monitoring. This becomes really important. So, you know, like cameras have little screens on them so you can see what you're pointing it at, right? If I just point this recorder at something and I'm not listening, like, I don't know how it sounds. So you need some headphones probably. Or something. You need some way to hear what you're recording. Speakers are what most, you know, are an option, but speakers play sounds out loud and microphones record sounds out loud, so they don't really work for that.
Yeah, it's a good way to get a loop.
Yeah, that's how
That's a nasty sound too.
Yeah, that's why I have tinnitus, which is a constant ringing in my ears that I've had for about 15 years. I'm one of the lucky ones for whom it has improved. Most people, it just gets worse and worse.
Oof.
Yeah. Protect your hearing, y'all.
Yeah.
Get some good earplugs. I like Etymotics. About $12 online for a pair of like nice earplugs that reduce the sound like the SPL by like 20 decibels without really messing with the frequency balance. So like I can wear them in rehearsals and gigs and it's fine.
Oh, interesting.
Anyways,
well,
that really derailed me.
Yeah. Well, it's like
hearing monitoring.
Yeah, monitoring and
so
creating a loop is not a good idea.
Totally. So when you're monitoring something that you're recording, you basically have like two options: closed back headphones or earbuds.
Yeah.
So you've seen me wear these a bunch on the stream. These are my HD XXs from previously known as Mass Drop. These are a lot like the Sennheiser HD 650s, but half the price. I don't know why people still buy the Sennheisers. Buy these, $220. They're great. But these are open back headphones, so you can see the driver there. That's my speaker. And so, like, there's no isolation at all. It's terrible for recording because anything I'm listening to bleeds right out the headphones and gets picked up by the mic.
Right.
But it's also terrible for monitoring because I can't hear the sounds of what I'm trying to listen to isolated from the sounds around me. So, like, for like on location or anywhere where you're trying to monitor sounds and you're trying to tell what a microphone is hearing and not what your ears are hearing, you need closed back headphones or something like that. We have these HD 280s here, in which are like slightly nicer ones, and then we got a bunch of pairs of other stuff. I use like the the wired like ear pods like came with my phone.
Yeah, sometimes they're really good. You can get them nice and snug in your ears, and
I'm like, all right, I'm all dorked out with like. I bought like the silicone tips for them.
Oh.
Like if anyone likes these things, like they're like I think these are like $5, and like they fit way better, and it actually like gives it a lot more low end too. It's a much nicer sounding headphone. It's a slight improvement.
I've never been a fan of earbuds. They've never been comfortable for me.
So I hate in ears. Like it really bothers me to shove something in my ear canal.
Yeah.
That's why I use these because these are true earbuds that actually like sit.
They
just sit in there, but they don't seal.
I see.
That's why I like them. Oof, I should probably clean those. Yeah. But like for professional stuff, if I'm like doing anything serious, like I bring. Jay and I like the Sony MDR 7506s.
Yeah.
But
those
like
things are legends. They've been around for forever.
I don't really like how they sound actually, but like they're nice and isolated and comfortable to wear.
Right.
These are a little more isolated, but I find them more comfortable to wear for long periods. And I actually,
really,
Sony's I find a little bright, and these I find really muddy.
Okay.
But I'm just a Goldilocks.
I love my Sonys, and I put new ear pads on, so that makes a big difference.
I gotta try that upgrade because I feel like it might make it sound better too.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. I gotta send you those.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely. For comfort. If you're wearing them for long periods of time, if you could imagine, like you're on set or whatever for 4 hours, 5 hours, 6 hours, you gotta wear these headphones, all day. You definitely want comfort. Is a big part.
You really want full over ears and not on ears, like a lot of like headphones are. Like I find the Sonys don't quite go all the way over for me.
That's the great thing about those like custom pads.
Yeah, they're a little bigger.
Yeah, they really cup your ears totally. They sit off your ears a bit. That was a problem I had too. It's like they
pushes on your ears.
Yeah, and that's not comfortable after.
The cups on the 280s are deeper too. They're a lot more pleasant. And then and these guys are like huge. That's so
those look
it's just like luxurious and spacious.
The 280s feel a little tight on sometimes to me. They are very isolating. And if you're, I feel like for doing editing, like if you're editing a lot of times if you're in the studio though, and you have nice monitor speakers, and you're in a space that's kind of treated for that, to be able to hear it like you would watch it on TV, especially if you're editing like a film or something, to be able to see it and monitor it like you would, because unless you're watching Netflix on your laptop at night and you don't want anybody to hear what you're watching, then maybe you wear headphones, but like a lot of people are going to sit in front of the TV and watch it. So if you like, if you have that setup where you can edit on that sort of, monitoring setup, at least in the studio, of course, when you're in the field, it's all about the headphones, but like, when you're in the studio editing your sound for film, I don't know if it's the same for music, if like a lot of times people edit just like with like monitoring big.
Oh, it's preferable.
Is it?
Yeah. It's just
But then most people listen to music on headphones or in their car.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. There's we'll get into more on this subject next time, I think, but like for sure there's a whole thing about like kind of being aware of like when you're working on stuff of like what the intended audience is, like are they like people who are going to listen on like headphones or like home stereo speakers, or like is it like for like is it to be played in like clubs alongside a DJ mix, or like is it for like a movie, like those sort of listening environments are different, and like the sort of things you might choose to do are a little bit different too.
Interesting.
But in terms of like the actual recording thing, like really any headphone that doesn't audibly leak sound and that will like provide enough isolation to allow you to hear what you're trying to monitor in isolation from like what's around you.
So say you were a live streamer, you probably wouldn't want open back headphones, because if you're like, say you're monitoring, say you're playing your games or whatever on your live stream, you don't like your audience is already hearing the game through OBS. You probably wouldn't want the game coming through the headphones and back through the mic if you're like right there with the open back headphones.
Right.
Although you probably could be far enough away, but it's probably preferable to have the isolated.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see, like do a survey of like go like flip through like 15 streams on Twitch and see what people are wearing.
Yeah.
I notice a lot of folks like wear like those like gaming headsets that have like included mic, but it seems like most serious streamers step up from that,
Right, with the dedicated mic system.
Get themselves like a SM7B and something.
Right.
Yeah.
So.
But yeah, it's totally like the open back thing can be a nightmare. Like I will not like mix stuff without them now, or like without like I won't mix on a closed back headphone anymore. Like it's awful.
Huh.
Like it's night and day, dude. But maybe it's more of a difference for music, like where I'm like trying to like you seem like when you're editing stuff like you tend to be working more on dialogue.
Right. Although it is nice with like most of the time I tend to work on headphones because that's the best like that I have access to.
Yeah.
But then of course you put it, you go into a theater or something and you play it on a big screen like at a film festival or something, and it sounds totally different than what you thought it sounded like on your headphones while you were editing it, and then you're like, that's not how it's supposed to sound like, and
Yeah. So like it's partially like like knowing your source, and like having the experience of like knowing what it sounds like and like how that translates to other places. Like I trust these headphones a ton because I've like listened to a crap ton of music on them, and like I really know how they sound now. Like I found that what the things that I think about on those headphones when I make adjustments based on what I'm hearing there, I'm like, oh, that was a good move. Honestly, when I used to do that with my, and maybe I'm just better at mixing now, but like when I used to do that with my Sonys, like I played on my speakers, I'd be like, oh, like I was overcorrecting for something. I felt like I was like correcting for the headphones.
Oh, right.
So like every microphone and every headphone has what's called a frequency response. I didn't talk about this yet. So like the frequency response is kind of like if you know what like an EQ is, like an equalizer, it's basically like a preset curve. I'm trying to find this thing. Where does my little cool looked right at it. So it's like a preset like curve that like adjusts the frequency balance of like whatever it's hearing, like our ears actually do the same thing. Maybe that's a topic for another time. So I think I always thought this was super cool. So like my C414 comes with this cool chart.
Do you want to?
I'm just gonna show it up here. Let's put it over here. So this is the actual measured frequency response for this actual microphone. I love this about this. So typically, like when you look up like specs for a mic, you can see something like this, but it's like general or like averaged for like a typical one of those. So like this is the measurement of my microphone. So
it's really, like specifically that.
Yes, this serial number. Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yes, I love it.
It's pretty nice.
Super cool. So like if I wanted to like go get another one, I could see how close they were. You know, they sell these in matched pairs as well, but I couldn't afford that at the time. These are not cheap mics, but they're great. So you'll notice that like there's a few different things, and they correspond to. There's 5 of them, right? Just like the 5 different polar patterns that we had.
Oh.
So the frequency response changes as the polar pattern changes, which I find really interesting. So these are all just kind of like relative, right? You know, like to themselves. There's no absolute value in the vertical. It's just like each of those lines is like 10 dB, you know? So like what this tells me, and then so we have a logarithmic scale of frequencies on the bottom, from 50 hertz to 20,000 hertz at the top. Well, 20 hertz, I guess, at the very bottom. That is the lowest frequency that a human ear can hear, or so. That's where those lines end. And then 20,000 hertz is about the loudest, or the highest frequency that we can hear. Although most people's hearing rolls off quite a bit below that. Mine starts to roll off around 16. Probably yours does. Yours might be a little better, Jay, actually. Like, you haven't exposed yourself to nearly as much loud sound.
Probably not.
And you're younger than me, so. So it's something that deteriorates with age and with exposure, so hearing protection is really great. So anyway, so what I'm seeing here is that like so we'll look at that first one, the top one. So it's on the O. So that's the Omni Mode. So you see the Omni, like it's kind of got a big. The things that stick out to me are the big peak in the highs, right? There's like kind of like at like 15 or so. There's like a big peak, and then like the lows kind of get louder and louder, and like the quietest spot is like actually right around 1K, which is great. I like. This looks a lot like an EQ curve that I put on things.
Interesting.
This is, so, boom, microphone choice, right? So, like, it saves you time. Like, if it sounds like more like what you wanted it to sound like when you record it.
What is the typical use case for this particular mic?
I mean, this is a general workhorse
versatile,
condenser.
Right, with all your different pickup patterns.
Yeah.
I mean, what like in the professional field, what's like it typically known
instruments
for instrument
drum overheads.
Okay.
Yeah, it makes an okay vocal mic too. It works. It's fine.
Okay.
It's not like special. The point of this mic is that it's neutral.
Oh, okay.
Although you can see from these like those aren't flat lines, so it's not like that neutral. You know what I mean? So take a look at the middle one, the orange one. That's like Cardioid Pattern. So that's like the pattern that's most likely to get used in. You know. And so like that, like there's a lot less variability in like the low frequencies, but then there's, and that super high frequency spike goes away. And instead what we're left with is like kind of like a bump around 3.8 or something like that. Right? That's like a big bump?
Yeah. And
that's the sweet spot for vocals, man. Like I always boost that frequency. Huh. Like for vocal, I'm getting like, right through the
oh yeah, need to adjust our
so anyway
source.
so like you don't have to worry about it.
Okay.
Just like I just sat in just the right spot, get it right in my eyes. So like it's like a little in that mode compared to Omni Mode, there's less low end and less high end, and or less like high highs and like a little more of those like high mids and like the like kind of like 2 in the 3 to 4 or 5K. So like changing polar patterns here is like EQing your source, in a weird way.
And if you don't like something that it's doing, you can counter that, right? You can kind of counter EQ it. You can add a...
Yeah, so like this is the topic of our next stream will be post-processing this kind of stuff and like what sort of tools are involved with that. But yes,
awesome.
That's exactly it, yeah. So like when you're looking at your microphone specs, if you're considering buying a microphone, it's worth taking a look at these graphs. They might not mean much at first, but if you start reading them, you'll eventually kind of get the idea. And once you start trying to EQ some sound, it'll mean a lot more to you. Yeah. So there's other aspects of the specs. Like another one is like sensitivity, which is kind of like hard to read. It's more about it's not the most meaningful spec. So like when when you're trying to find out like how much gain a microphone needs, like
Try to go the other way with it.
yeah. So like microphones are varying sensitivity. So some of them need more gain from your preamps than others. So like being aware of like how much gain your preamps have. So like they'll be advertised as like so many decibels of gain. Like I think the Zooms are like 50 some. Like nicer ones are like in the 60 some range. So some microphones require a lot more gain than others, like that SM7B we were talking about earlier.
Right. Oh man, I've heard that thing like needs a lot of gain for it.
Yeah, I even have, you know, in my Apollo, I run a cloud lifter in front of it. Like, even though, like, the Apollo has 65 dB of gain, it can totally run that thing. It's just, like, it gets noisy when it gets up that high.
And the cloud lifters...
just adds 20 dB of clean gain.
Right.
So the cloud lifter is, like, a little inline box that plugs in. You have to use 2 XLR cables. Like, plug it from a mic. A mic, a non-condenser mic, because it doesn't transmit phantom power.
You lose your phantom power, huh?
Yes, because it takes phantom. The
SM7B does take phantom power?
No, the cloud lifter does.
Oh, okay.
That's where the gain comes from. It's powered from phantom. So I run out the mic XLR cable into my cloud lifter, which is just like a little box that just passively, once you feed a phantom power, adds gain, then add another thing. So it's like if your preamp's too quiet, there are solutions other than buying a new preamp. But most preamps are fine for most things. You know, like it's like this special thing where I wanted to use this like cool hipster mic that like I ended up needing this.
So what
solution.
Why do some mics need the 48 volts of phantom power and some don't?
That's the condenser versus dynamic thing.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So it's the dynamic
condensers that do.
The condensers do.
Yeah.
Okay.
So like yeah.
So the SM7B is a dynamic mic then.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's more similar to the handheld like
the like if you look inside an SM7B, like the capsule that you see is really similar to looking to this. You remember I pulled out the 57?
Yeah.
Yeah. It looks just like this, right? Just
you show that one close up.
Okay. Ooh. So here's what a 58 looks like on the inside. So that's like the actual mic capsule. There's still like a little bit of like foam windscreen there.
It's a different design capsule than right. Okay. And that's why it requires those don't require phantom power.
Right. Yeah. So it's like this thing is literally just like a little speaker cone in there, and it gets woofed around, and that generates. You know, it's like it generates this the same way. It's like the magnet moving across the voice coil.
So
it's like the exact opposite of how a speaker works.
Huh.
So, whereas this thing is like it's a charged thing.
Right.
And it's not. It's just like it's instead of like a moving voice like a speaker moving, it's just like a slightly vibrating capsule. So it's much more sensitive at the same volume.
Interesting.
So people, like I said, this was a myth, but I'm gonna say it anyways. It is kind of a myth, but it's like it feels enough like a truism that I might as well say it, because like practically speaking, condensers are more sensitive than dynamic mics, because they're often like brighter sounding, and they just like get louder with the same amount of gain.
Right.
So you can get further away from them, which means you can pick up more room tone. So like the reason people choose dynamic mics over condensers, like the SM7B over a condenser for like doing VO stuff, is because it forces you to get up on it.
Yeah.
Which means and it's also at a low output, so it's like you're not going to turn it up.
Huh.
But if you put your lips right up to your NT1, you wouldn't need very much gain, and you wouldn't get much room tone out of it. You know? But the point of it is that you can get it away from you. Whereas these stop picking up very well.
Oh yeah, they definitely like those.
As you get further away from them, you lose a lot.
Yeah. Which is great if you need to isolate your the vocals. If you're like if you're out on a crowded street doing interviews, like that's a great mic for that because you don't pick up a lot of the noise around you.
Mm-hmm. The problem though, even though this is designed for handheld use, there can be a lot of handling noise.
Right.
So like microphones aren't like ears. You like if I plug this thing in, like you can like hear the cable wiggling in it for some reason, they transmit a lot of mechanical noise. The reason that 58 is so heavy is because it's a dense body, partially to
try to
reduce that.
Yeah.
But it doesn't eliminate it at all.
Right.
It's mostly in a music setting, it's mostly fine. You're gonna EQ a lot of the low end. It mostly manifests as a low end rumble, which you're not gonna want in your vocals anyways. So you're probably gonna EQ it out. But if you're doing just like run and gun interviews, if you don't have some sort of like high pass, low cut kind of scenario, like a filter on it, you might end up with a bunch of rumble that you'll need to EQ out in post.
Yeah.
Which, isn't the end of the world. It's fine. But
so is the boom mic then a condenser mic as well?
Yes.
Since it requires phantom power?
Any of them that require power, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think so. There's maybe some like some weird exceptions to that, but all the normal mics.
There are some headphones that require power as well, aren't there? Aren't there some like headphones that need like preamps to actually be loud enough?
Well, okay, so yeah. So like headphones do require amps. Yeah.
Right.
All headphones do.
Okay.
Sometimes that amp is transparent.
It's like built into the system, whatever you plug it into.
Yeah, like this little Zoom has a headphone amp.
Right. Oh, that's right. So there was
in the headphone output,
So there's
this little guy has a headphone amp.
Right.
The Lightning dongle has a headphone amp in it.
So I've seen like, looking at this if I can say it right, Rodecaster Pro, which is a mixer. People have said that the headphone preamps on that system, the like monitoring preamps, have this low buzz to them that doesn't end up in your final thing. So like, is that something that you should look out for depending on what mixer you're using or where you're monitoring from?
I mean, like, yeah, like not all amps are created equal, and like they gotta skimp on the design somehow.
Right.
Like that thing has so many features in it for like the price, that like I'm not surprised that it's something like that.
Right.
I had a cheaper headphone amp than the one I have now, and yeah, it had some weird. I actually thought that I screwed up a recording gig once.
Yeah, it's very deceiving.
I panicked. I did this recording where I like set up and recorded this like piano player for like 4 or 5 hours, and I got home, I started listening to it, and it was just like all this weird noise, and I was like, what the hell? And I freaked out. I started like pulling out Isotope RX to like try and get rid of it, and I was just like started stressing so hard. This big pass of like denoising on the whole like 5 hours of audio, and it didn't work, and I was like,
wow.
And it was my headphone amp. It sounded bad.
That's crazy. Yeah, I mean,
replace that. It sounded fine.
I'm glad that like that's where you go. Watch reviews for products before you buy them. Is that you can find out that stuff and to look out for that. And it's like if you were monitoring from that Rodecaster and you heard that, you would think that it was like your mic or your headphones or something. Like it doesn't seem like. Sometimes it's easy to forget that those preamps in there can be the things that are causing the problem. And like people said that the audio out of that is like clean. It's like really nice. Like if you put an SD card in it and record it to the SD card or sent it out to say the ATEM, for instance, like if we were using one right now, you guys should hear like clean audio. But if I was monitoring it, I would hear that static from those preamps. So, if I was monitoring though on the computer, I wouldn't hear the static. Or if I was monitoring on, say the ATEM, on the ATEM advanced versions have a headphone jack, the monitor there, it shouldn't have the static either.
Right.
But just because they put a cheaper preamp in there, you get that static, and that could drive you crazy. Like, I know when we were talking about the Blue Yetis, which are great USB. They also make a XLR version, but the USB ones are really popular, and they're pretty great mics. But USB mics can have some. There's a good chance that if your USB like ports could have some, could be faulty or could have some could be interference. The USB cables, depending on the quality of them, can easily be like. So I fought with that mic. I had one for 3 or 4 years. I fought with that mic so much to try and get rid of this just minuscule amount of static that was just always there. I couldn't, and to this day I don't know what it was, and I bet you it was something to do with the preamps.
Well, okay, so bus powered audio interfaces. So that microphone contains a few different things, right? So it's got the mic, it's got preamps and a headphone amp, and it's got the digital converters, right? And blah blah blah. Bus, when it's powered over the USB bus, like the USB bus is not like filtered for noise, and like audio equipment is really sensitive to electrical noise. So like notoriously, like when people have a problem with like audio and they have some bus powered piece of equipment in the chain, that is the problem. It's really common.
Yeah.
So like there's another pitfall for like those of you thinking about buying some USB gear, maybe like just beware. You know, it's a good place to get started, but it's like not a thing you can grow into really very easily and can cause some kind of problems. So that problem also like can exist with like this Focusrite is bus powered. The only way to power it is via the USB connection. So like in theory this would have this problem too. However, like this thing's not trying to like fit a bunch of stuff into a tiny space, and so like there's also like this like isolation of the parts of the gear that help reduce the internal noise. Every piece of equipment has self noise though. Like preamps have self noise. When you turn them up you hear it. Like the microphones have self, like every part of the chain, cables add, like the longer your chain the more noise. The more parts of the chain the more noise. And so like this is where like being mindful of that gain staging thing is like really important. Whereas if I fed like a super quiet signal all the way to the end, and then Jay had to turn it up super loud, he'd be turning up all the noise of that whole chain too. Whereas if I get the mic gain right at the source, and then send him a nice clean signal, then he doesn't have to turn it up, and then he's not turning up the noise of the entire rest of the chain. I think that's a concise explanation of that concept.
Right.
So yeah, so it's like cumulative, like noise adds up as you drift down your signal path to wherever it's going. So just being able to monitor it, and if you have a setup as complicated as ours, being able to monitor it in multiple places along that chain is really valuable.
Exactly.
Like normally when we're doing music and I've got headphones and Jay's got headphones, he's monitoring at a different point in the chain than I am. He's actually monitoring after the digital conversion, and like it's like 2 seconds later and all that weird stuff.
Yeah.
So there's like so I guess this is another like thing to like if you're doing music or like anything where you're trying to like synchronize something you're recording to something you're hearing, monitoring in real time becomes really crucial. So there's this idea of like zero latency or direct monitoring, which is what I normally do when we're doing this. So like not all audio recording devices have this feature, but like, it's a common thing. Like anytime you're sending audio into a computer, like with this Focusrite, it lets me do this direct monitoring.
The H5 too.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah.
It's definitely a direct monitor because you're like in the field. You know, you got your boom mic or whatever mic. You know, you can get that direct. You know.
Yeah. I would think that most recorders like are a direct thing because they're just designed to like capture whatever you're going on.
Right.
Whereas like this thing, you might want to like send a signal into the computer and then hear that. You know, like I could plug a guitar into this and run it into the computer and use a virtual guitar amp, and then I could hear that. So that's not direct monitoring, because it's going into the computer. But going into the computer and out incurs some latency, and so it's always advantageous if you can to monitor it in real time. So like this thing allows me to just put a signal in, and before it goes anywhere else, it'll send it out the headphone amp and feed it to me. So that's direct monitoring, pretty essential.
So there's another USB mic that is made by Elgato. And I've been,
really?
You know, I've been kind of a fan of their stuff so far. I've got my hands on some of their lights and of course their capture card, which is probably their most like prominent product, is their 4K capture card. That's a really cool. I use it at home for my like Zoom meetings. And I have my DSLR or my mirrorless camera hooked up to it. It allows you capture 4K. My mirrorless camera can output 4K, so it's a really clean. It's like having a super nice webcam. But Elgato, the brand that makes it, makes a bunch of other streaming equipment, and they have this little USB mic that I think it's fairly new, and I would be curious to know like how decent it actually is.
Oh, yeah.
But it's USB powered as well.
Can you pull that? Is that on this? Can everyone see that right now?
Yeah, I can pull it up.
Maybe we can talk about it because I was actually wanted to touch on this idea of like looking at microphone specs.
Mm-hmm.
And so you got a spec sheet right there. And,
yeah. Let me do that.
I think that it's kind of cool. So when you're shopping for microphones, like they'll feed you if you're looking on like a site that like isn't trying to like treat you like you don't know what you're doing. They'll feed you a bunch of specs about like your mic, and some of them are like kind of some of them are more meaningful than others.
Oops.
That was weird.
So here's the Elgato website, and here's the where did the spec sheet go? A lot of products.
Where
got.
done.
Oh, there it is.
There it is. Okay, cool. So this is like the spec sheet. So you're seeing a few different specs here because this microphone is a USB mic, so it's doing a few different jobs at once. It's a microphone and it's a USB audio interface. So you're going to see specs in here that are features of mics and specs in here that are features of an audio interface. So like at the very top, capsule, 17 millimeter electret. That's describing the type of condenser capsule that's in there. I'm not really sure. Like electret is a common one. I feel like that's like a lower cost one generally. I don't recall what the function is the difference, but seems to be in like smaller or less conventional form factors. Cardioid polar pattern and fixed, right? So what that tells me is there's only one polar pattern. So it's going to be that standard cardioid pattern that you'd expect from a mic.
Unlike the Yeti can do, I think.
Yeti has multiple. Yeti's so cool because it has stereo too. Ah. That was the thing that I loved about the Yetis. It has built-in stereo mics.
Interesting.
Yeah. Really neat tool actually. So then the next couple specs are things that we will talk about at our next stream, which are related to the audio interface side of this. The resolution and the sample rate of the audio. The resolution there is the bit depth, and the sample rate is the sample frequency. That 48 kilohertz, 24-bit is standard high-quality video audio. And so it's fixed here. They don't give you options. So this is made for video audio people. The frequency response is... So basically, it's like it's showing you the lowest and the highest frequency that this mic can capture. That's not a hard cutoff, but it basically like means that like, beyond that point, it rolls off to something that very quiet, or considerably quieter. So remember I said earlier we can hear between 20 and 20,000 hertz. This mic only goes down to 70, which also happens to be the third of the 4 settings of my low cut switch on my C414. So it's going to sound like a mic with the low cut switch engaged.
Interesting.
Which there's pretty much no reason not, unless you're a bass singer, there's no reason not to, or like unless you're trying to do like bass, you're doing like Smog's voice or whatever, like you're trying to like really boom it up with the bass. Yeah. Like there's no reason to go lower than 70 hertz. Like no, you know. So then here we go. The sensitivity. It's like. I find this is where like I find this spec kind of difficult to read. I don't really fully understand what it means personally. It kind of has to do with like how loud a signal it spits out at a given gain level.
I would assume that this dial on the front is the gain dial.
Presumably, yeah. But there's no there's no spec here about how much gain is on tap. Right. But it looked but like inferring from that, it looks like there's a 40 dB swing, right? Mm-hmm. So like probably there is 40 decibels of gain available, is my assumption. So max SPL, remember we talked about dB SPL, is 120 decibels. I believe that is about the sound of a jet engine, like right next to your ears.
Oh my gosh.
I'm going to Google that real quick. How loud is 120 decibels? Oh, it's not quite. No, I guess that's a lot louder. I take it back. This is like the sound of a like loud sports crowd, okay. I guess. It says, noise above 70 decibels over a prolonged period of time can damage your hearing, and noise above 120 decibels can cause immediate permanent harm. Wow.
I don't know how you'd even possibly get this mic up to that level of. Right. I mean, what do you have to like yell directly into those?
So this is what I'm saying. Like, no, like you'd have to like be like you'd have to put it up to the speakers at like a loud rock show, like a loud rock show. Huh. A chainsaw gets up to about 115 dB, so louder than a chainsaw.
Like right next to a chainsaw, not just like in the vicinity of a chainsaw.
Yeah, like I believe when they measure these things, it's like from like a foot away or something.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Huh. So yeah, like yeah. So if you're recording like gunshots, you probably need a different mic.
Oh yeah, how loud's a gunshot?
Like it gets up in like 140 range.
140.
Yeah. Anyways, yeah. That's good. So what else do we have? So max SPL, which isn't really meaningful unless you're doing some extreme stuff, and then the dynamic range. That's like a weird. I don't even know why they say that. I'm not sure what that means in this context. But the things that really matter is like the frequency and the frequency response. and then like, I mean, that's pretty much like the main, and the polar patterns. It's kind of like, it's more about the features available than like, you know, like,
right.
Like this, like I feel like the sensitivity is kind of like relative, and like the like dynamic range. That's kind of just like all relative. Like they're all gonna, you know, a mic's gonna work for your purpose probably, especially if it's built for your specific.
So there is a wave. There's a wave 3 and a. I think the big thing with these is well, this does have a higher sample rate. That's about it. And then whatever this captive mute is, and this has an extra monitor crossfade. I'm not sure, but they do.
Oh wait, scroll down again. What is it called? That mic. Oh yeah. So that
PC monitor crossfade.
So that, remember I was talking about direct versus non-direct or like monitoring.
Oh right.
So that's basically like a mix between like your direct and it's like so instead of like switching between direct monitoring or not, like it's like a blend.
Oh.
Between your direct volume and the playback from the headphones.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's just like a simpler control because like in like other, you know, like they're just trying to simplify it for the user. Like,
right.
You know, you might just have 2 controls for it otherwise. Like but yeah,
right.
Trying to make it easy for you.
So
I personally don't like that arrangement, but if you were only doing this for like streaming and just wanted something simple,
yeah,
that makes a lot more sense.
It's a pretty decent price. So that's for the 1. It's 130.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about the 3.
This seems to be pretty standard for like what I see like for
the style
for like USB mics of like a reasonable quality.
I don't know what's happening with their website here, but
does not like that.
Trying to be all fancy and it decides it's gonna. Wait to see the inside.
Superior circuitry.
A little bit different looking, but it's, you know, I feel like they've got some pretty decent stuff, and their software is pretty good. They have, you know, it's all looks like you can have them all monitor all your different inputs right in their software. I feel like they're doing a pretty decent job for you know, making streaming accessible. They also are the ones that make the stream decks, which are very popular. But yeah, it's another USB mic that one day I'd like to give a shot. But
I feel like the main thing with like USB mics, or like with like what we're doing, is like there can be a funny thing like when your audio and your video come to your PC from separate sources of like alignment of those things. And so like it can be nice to like run your audio into the same, like, so like the way we have our stream set up right now is like running the audio into the ATEM. We don't have to like deal with syncing them
right
in software, but like it's one of those things where like you shouldn't have to do any syncing of them in software, but like you might when you're running like the video and the audio in from separate ports, and you know it. Yeah.
So because I'm running, I'll give Corey back his little projector here. Because the boom mic or Corey's mic is running through so many different things. We've got, you know, it's over there, it's coming through the XLR, it's coming through the Focusrite, and then out of the Focusrite into the ATEM, and there's a delay in there. It's being processed through a whole nother unit. So in the ATEM software controller, I've got a 7-frame delay. So I was sitting here like clapping before we started. Like I would listen on the headphones and match up my mic on the camera, which is always going to be synced. That's the one thing about the ATEM, is if your mic is on your camera and the audio is coming through the HDMI, you know that that's going to be synced with your video. But because the boom mic is not hooked up to the camera, it's like we could easily take it up and hook it to this top-down camera we've got here.
Yeah.
And then it would be synced, and I wouldn't have to worry about it. But because we're running it through another system, it requires to be like offset just a little bit, so you don't get kind of a delay. Otherwise, you would definitely probably hear it, because you would sort of hear me. You know, I'm close enough still to the boom mic that you would hear an echo if it wasn't synced. So right at this moment, it's a 7-frame delay. It could be more. I've set it to less. I've set it to to more. So
but it's like a fixed value with any system. It's not like gonna fluctuate. Like in theory, it doesn't like fluctuate over the course of the stream. In practice, it probably does jitter around a little bit.
Yeah, depending on how we've like set things up. At this current setup, the 7 frames seems to work. Seems to work the best.
That's interesting.
So obviously, it would be different with different systems.
Totally.
But, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, geez. Okay, so I feel like I like covered a lot of things that I wanted to cover today.
Yeah.
You know, choosing a mic for different applications, how to connect it to different kinds of things, monitoring options, and maybe this is a good time to like sort of like wind down towards next time. So next time, what I want to do is talk about like what do you do once you've gotten something recorded, right? Like and also like what do you do while you're recording a little bit, you know? So you've chosen your mic, you got all your stuff set up. We didn't really talk about like stands and shock mounts and stuff. That's pretty straight. You know, basically like it's pretty straightforward, I guess. Like you want, I remember I talked about handling noise. You want to isolate mics from like noise. So if they're on a stand, like if you bump around a stand, like if you bump that mic, like you probably heard that at home, you know. So like this mic's in a shock mount. So if I bump the stand or something like that, like it's less likely to translate. Although it probably does translate a little bit.
Yeah, it's not the best shock mount for that. Like you can get really elaborate like shock mounts.
Yeah, like just the more isolated they are from, you know, the better. So like this is a shock mount for the C404. It's kind of a cool little design.
Huh.
Just like screws right in there and like holds it pretty good. Just like frictions it in there. It's not like super tight. But even like this one's got this kind of like little S jog in the thing here to kind of like isolate it a smidge more. Like it's really interesting. But yeah, sticking your mic in a shock mount, and then like the one thing we didn't cover was like talking about like wind. So you get your phone windscreens for like, you know, whooshing breaths. You get your pop filters for plosives. So if like someone's gonna like say a bunch of P's and B's, that's what these guys are for. Just keep a gust of wind from reaching that microphone. And then if you're outside, you're trying to deal with real wind. That's what you get. Your dead cat.
Yep.
So, if you wonder if this one will fit on here, try that. But anyways, that's like the kind of like accoutrements, right? You have some stands. You might have a boom stand if you want to hold it in your hand. You know, different sizes of stands, put in places, wind protection. But otherwise, that's kind of it. You know. Then you got your mic. You point at stuff. Then we're gonna capture some sound. And as long as you're not clipping your input levels are fine. You're gonna end up with some usable audio. And so I think next time we're gonna talk about like how to grab good audio and like good practices about that, and then like how to edit some stuff, you know, like basic post-production tools. And I'm gonna try and keep it general enough that anything I say will apply to audio for video folks, straight video folks, podcasters, musicians, kind of the broad general stuff. Yeah, I suppose we might as well call it there then, eh?
Sounds good to me.
Cool.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us, guys, and I guess we'll see you next week for part 2 of the audio adventures.
The thrilling conclusion.
Yep.
Yeah.
Cool. Alrighty.
See y'all later.
Yep. Bye for now.